Genghis Khan, often referred to as the Khan of the Burned Earth, was not just a military conqueror but the architect of a terrifying empire built on war, fear, and the complete annihilation of resistance. Wherever his nomadic army went, they didn't simply win battles. They eradicated entire cities, cultures, and lineages. Men were slaughtered in masses, elders were executed without hesitation, and whole civilizations were turned to ash. The Mongol way of war was absolute. No second chances, no mercy, only submission or death. Women and girls, however, were rarely killed. Instead, they were dragged from the ruins of their burning homes, torn from the arms of dead relatives, and taken as spoils of war. These captives were distributed among the warriors or sent as tribute to the higher ranks. Their fate wasn't freedom or kindness but servitude, humiliation, and suffering masked under the cold label of concubines. While some women, especially those of noble birth or exceptional beauty, were sent to serve in the Khan's court or harem, many were passed from hand to hand like objects, treated with a mixture of desire and brutality that left them broken in body and spirit. But Genghis Khan wasn't just a brute. He was a tactician who saw opportunity in everything, even in his enemies. Soldiers who surrendered were not always killed. If they had skill, they were absorbed into the Mongol ranks, not out of generosity but because the Khan understood the value of using every tool available. His laws, the yasa, were enforced with deadly precision, and though they promised order, they were born from fear and violence. Yet even in this hellish system, the Khan earned a strange form of respect. Those who had lost everything sometimes chose to serve him, seeing in him a leader who was not only powerful but disciplined, structured, and strangely fair to those he chose to keep alive. Across the steppes, his name was spoken with a mixture of dread and admiration. Stories of his generosity circulated alongside tales of his savagery. People claimed he would give his own possessions to help someone in need, while others whispered of cities turned to graveyards by his hand. Perhaps Genghis Khan truly believed in his mission, a world ruled by the blade but governed with order. His empire functioned like a machine, running on cold logic, strict hierarchy, and absolute discipline. There was some meritocracy in his realm. A man could rise through the ranks by skill alone, not just birthright. But this wasn't justice, it was efficiency. Women, too, played roles beyond being mere prizes. Historical records show that some were warriors in their own right. Though rare, women in the Mongol army trained for battle, bled in war, and fought alongside their male counterparts. However, the majority of women taken during conquests were viewed as commodities. European women, with their pale skin and distinct features, were especially prized. If they were beautiful, they might live under constant watch, stripped of autonomy, and forced into a life where their survival depended on obedience and appearance. Life as a concubine was not a reprieve from war. It was a different kind of battlefield. After the city of Gorin fell to the Mongols, its end was not marked by fire alone but by the brutal dismantling of its people. Powerful women like Turk and Khatan, rulers of once mighty realms, were dragged away in chains. Their royal children were murdered to prevent any claim to power. The royal women were handed over to Mongol commanders as wives, but this term meant nothing like partnership or affection. It meant ownership, servitude, and silence. The palace's head woman, Shaheen, along with numerous noblemen, were paraded in a slave caravan to the Mongol capital of Karakoram, not as guests, but as living tribute. Concubines were everywhere. This wasn't an exception. It was normalized brutality. Mongol warriors viewed taking women as a sign of power. To them, captives were not just rewards but trophies, flesh-made evidence of conquest. The logic was cruel. If a man couldn't protect his women, he didn't deserve them. After a raid, women were handed out to soldiers as a way of letting them enjoy themselves. But what the women suffered could never be described as enjoyment. In some instances, women avoided such fates only through death. Many chose to end their lives rather than face what was coming. Those who survived were dragged across the freezing steppes, starved, beaten, and raped. If they were not beautiful or strong enough to be useful, they were discarded, left to die alone. The Mongol army saw usefulness as a measure of worth. Even then, some Mongol warriors showed restraint, even compassion, but these acts were rare and could not outweigh the overarching cruelty of the system. Captive women were often given as gifts to commanders, traded like currency. These gifts were wrapped in sorrow and silence, forced to smile and obey. The Mongols didn't destroy everything. They kept what was valuable. That included women. The fate of those who entered Genghis Khan's harem reveals much about his empire. He had 4 official wives, but some sources claim he kept more than 7,000 concubines. These women were not prisoners in chains, but neither were they free. They were maintained, clothed, fed well, not out of kindness, but to preserve their value. They were taught to sing, to entertain, to behave with grace. If a concubine had a special talent, it was used for the Khan's benefit. Their lives revolved around obedience. Some concubines rose in influence, but even they walked a tightrope. One mistake could mean death. The Chinese envoy Mang Hong recorded a surprising moment during a diplomatic feast with the Khan. Seated beside him were his wife, Princess Lyman, and 8 concubines, all treated as nobility. They were called ladies, not prisoners. But this was a veneer of civility. The respect given to them was conditional, based on looks, talent, and their ability to serve without question. One of the strangest elements of Mongol culture was the existence of a traveling orchestra of 20 young female musicians. These women marched with the army, playing soft melodies amidst bloodshed. This dichotomy, music alongside murder, reveals the complexity and contradiction of Genghis Khan. He was a warlord who bathed the world in blood, yet sought solace in art and beauty. Even the wives of defeated kings were taken into his harem. Their bloodlines, nobility, and previous titles meant nothing. They were simply new additions to his collection. Genghis Khan once shared what he believed to be life's greatest joy: defeating enemies, taking all they owned, watching their loved ones cry, riding their horses, and holding their daughters and wives. This philosophy, that conquest justified cruelty, was not just his own but embedded in Mongol military culture. The taking of concubines wasn't seen as depravity, it was celebrated. To be chosen by the Khan was, in the twisted logic of the time, a better fate. Some women even rose in power. Dorjine, wife of the Khan's 3rd son Ogday, became regent of Mongolia after his death. Her rule lasted 4 years, a rare example of a captive woman gaining true authority. But for every Dorjine, there were thousands who suffered silently, their stories erased, their lives broken before they began. These women were not remembered in history books. Their names vanished like ash in the wind. The final fate of many female captives was silence. Those who were not beautiful or useful enough were given to lower-ranking soldiers, men with no sense of refinement, who saw women only as tools for gratification. For these unfortunate women, life became an unending cycle of abuse. Once the warriors were done, the women were often discarded, killed, or abandoned. Some succumbed to the injuries inflicted upon them, while others chose death over enduring further torment. The steppe was littered with unmarked graves, the final resting place for women whose only crime was being in the path of conquest. Rare were the moments of compassion, rarer still the stories of escape. But one incident stands out: the story of Kulan, a woman from the Market clan. She was introduced to Genghis Khan by a trusted associate named Na. Fearing for her safety on the road, Na sheltered her in his home for 3 days before bringing her to the Khan. This act nearly cost Na his life. The Khan, believing his property had been touched, ordered Na's execution. Kulan intervened. She stood before the most powerful man in the world and defended her protector. Her words, calm but passionate, saved Na. She reminded the Khan that compassion could exist alongside power. Her bravery, in a world where women had no voice, shines as a flicker of light in the overwhelming darkness. Yet, For most women, such moments never came. Those not chosen for the Khan's harem ended up as property of the common soldier. Their lives ended in tragedy, their deaths unmourned. The brutal reality of the Mongol conquests was that women's bodies became the battlefield. Their suffering was not collateral damage, it was an expected consequence of war. Concubines were not just women taken in war. They were tools of diplomacy, gifts, rewards, and punishments. They were stripped of their past, given new names, and expected to serve in silence. And if they ever dared to betray the Khan, even in love, they faced death without appeal. This system, built on conquest, enforced by fear, and normalized through repetition, turned human lives into possessions. Genghis Khan's empire was vast, disciplined, and efficient, but beneath its military genius lay a foundation soaked in blood, horror, and the cries of forgotten women. If this story disturbed you, it should. History is not just the story of battles won but of lives lost, voices silenced, and truths buried beneath the myths of greatness. Don't let their stories remain forgotten. Speak them. Remember them. You've just witnessed one of the darkest punishments in history. But many more still lurk in the shadows. So if you dare, subscribe to Torture Vault, where every scream from the past still echoes.